The island. Hey, glad to see you got here in one piece, or at least alive. Not all of us did. I personally lost an arm to the monkeys the first day I arrived, and I've read tales of far worse fates. Medical supplies and instructions on how to use them are in the white cupboard in case you need them. Hopefully you don't. My name was Daniel. If you're reading this, I am dead. Don't look for my grave, you won't find it. You won't find the graves of any of the former inhabitants of this island. Well, you can find the grave of one guy who tried to bury himself, but he's not in it. His bones just disappeared. Everyone's corpse just fades away, kind of like how we all faded into this world to begin with. Perhaps I should have begun this letter there, at the beginning. But then again, my end is your beginning, and your end will be the beginning for another, until this world falls to nothing as I expect it someday will. You, my friend, whoever you are no doubt confused as to why you suddenly appeared on this desolate island, in this desolate world. We, the previous inhabitants of the island, have passed down what knowledge we can throughout the generations, and our conclusions, such as we can come to, are thus: all who come here were in the habit of thinking too much, dreaming too much, wandering too much, and going both mentally and physically to all the places most loosely attached to reality. In a phrase, we all fled from the world we lived in. Should we really have been surprised, then, to find ourselves outside of it? But there is one thing more which unites us all, and it is that we all sought, in our former lives, to be alone. We sought it, and we found it. Well, you can help us prove or disprove this theory. It's only a theory. But whether you wanted to be alone or not, my friend, you are now alone. This island is empty of all other men. It's just you here. I went slightly insane when I first realized it. It was only through the writing of other men who had preceded me that I was able to weather that storm. So I have written you, the heir to this world, the letter which you are now reading, in the hopes that you take your arrival a little better than I did. I had a letter as well, but in my rage and despair I think I destroyed it. I couldn't bear to be alone. I refused to believe I was alone. Accepting it was the hardest thing I've ever done, and I have done some of the hardest challenges this world has to offer. Again, I hope you're taking this better than I did. If you've read this far, you probably have. So, perhaps I should get some of the more practical things out of the way. You'll find a map in the drawer of the table you found this letter on. It'll help you find the things I refer to. Your primary source of food will be the cows and the chickens. They're kept under lock and key behind fences with sharp tops, so the monkeys can't get to them. Make sure to chop down any trees that start growing too close to the fence, or the monkeys will get over them and you'll be reduced to scavenging for seaweed to fill your knotted stomach. Instructions on how to take care of the livestock can be found in the library. Instructions on everything can be found in the library, actually. Take good care of the library. It's the reason I knew to pass on all this knowledge to you. And of course, the previous inhabitants of the island being the runaway dreamers that we are, we've written some books as well. Some writers of old, not including myself, have taken it upon themselves to write a series of novels, one by each author that passes through this place and cares to join them. It's wonderful stuff. Someone has written the history of this island, or as much of the history as he was able to scrape together. It's quite thorough and useful and not at all dry. I recommend it. I said that I would speak of practical things, and I am beginning to digress. Let's continue on. All about the island you'll find rough shelters. Those were my personal contribution to this island, since you never know when you're about to be ambushed by the monkeys while exploring. Their shouts and shrieks give plenty of warning, but it's often not enough to run all the way back to the stronghold, or the outpost, where you found this letter. The shelters contain some food and water, but you'll have to replenish these every few years since food doesn't stay good forever and water might leak out. The shelters also contain weapons, and trust me, you'll want to keep a weapon on you at all times whenever you're not in the outpost or the stronghold. The outpost was built, I think, to make sure that people like you would be able to get somewhere safe the instant you faded into this world. Most likely it was the first thing you saw, being, as it is, the tallest thing on this island, built in the highest place. It's a noble tower. The monkeys never come near it, and you can lounge on the top floors in the summer sun whenever you need a rest. Did I mention it's always summer here? You'll still have the dry season and the wet season, but it's always hot. You'll get used to it. But if you haven't been to the stronghold yet, you need to brave the monkeys and see it. Chances are you'll be living there for the rest of your life. Most of us have lived our whole lives there, and it's been accordingly prepared for you. The pastures and the library are there. The workshops are there. The statues and paintings are there. Every work of art that we've made in our attempts to stave off loneliness, you'll find there. You'll find weapons there too. The monkeys always travel in large packs, and it is primarily their numbers which make them so dangerous. The weapons stored in the stronghold are designed for fighting against large numbers. Learn to swing one of the huge hammers if you can. It's been recorded that nothing strikes fear into a monkey's heart more than seeing its comrades crushed beneath the hammer's mighty blows. The loud sounds the hammer makes also seem to have an effect on them. But if you're a woman, on the frailer side, or have lost one of your hands to the monkeys, the swords will do fine. I speak from my one-handed experience. The monkeys, really, are the sole plague upon this island, apart from loneliness. We have food and water in abundance, no earthquakes ever seem to strike, and not even the mightiest of storms has been able to topple the outpost, let alone uproot the stronghold. It's been the endeavor of many of us to get rid of the monkeys for good, but all our scheming and fighting has so far done us no good. But don't let our failures deter you from trying to rid this land of the pests. We have a journal in the library dedicated to recording knowledge on how to fight them and keep them from reproducing like crazy. If you want to help us make this world safe, read, and prepare to fight. But most of us understand if you don't feel up to the task. It's just one of the few tasks that really need doing, and one of the tasks that we've put the most work into. The history book says that the monkeys appeared because life was too easy on the island and its inhabitants got too lazy, but it doesn't say where exactly the monkeys came from. Still, even if the monkeys keep us from being lazy, how can a man with honor let them act as they please? They've murdered many. That we know with utmost certainty. We will put an end to their tyranny. We must. But again, if you don't want to join our war, most of us understand. Some of us don't, because some of us have watched the monkeys destroy centuries worth of work and art, but most of us do. I think that's all I have to say that's practical. Between the cows and the chickens and the drawing up of water from the well, you should be able to keep somewhat busy during the mornings. No doubt you'll want more variety for your diet. Fruit and vegetables grow wild on the island, but have resisted our every attempt to domesticate them. As far as we know, there is nothing poisonous on the island, but just to be safe you may want to check to see if anything you find in the jungle is also in the cookbook. The cookbook is in the kitchen. Just between you and me, it is the singular most valuable book on this whole island. I attribute to it most of my recovery from my mild case of insanity. Or maybe it wasn't so mild. But when your mornings are over, then come the long, empty afternoons, and the equally long and empty evenings and nights. If you're too scared of the monkeys, you'll stay in the stronghold all year round, and the same halls paced over and over again can start to seem endlessly confining. I don't know what advice I can give to you to help you get through those hours after you've read all the books in our woefully small library and tried your hand at all the tools in the workshop. What did I do? I began thinking of you, began trying to make life on the island as good as I possibly could for the one who came after me, and I suppose I would urge you to do the same, but even I have had my fair share of moments of imprisonment. This island is, after all, something of a prison as much as it is something of the freedom we thought we sought, when we wandered through the real world with empty fantasies in our heads. This island is a world of its own, severed entirely from the world we once knew. We only think it a prison because we want to go back and cannot. We thought similarly of our home, did we not? We wanted to escape the problems the real world had to offer, just as we now want to escape the problems this island has to offer. Everything is a prison, then. If you want a world without problems, then nothing is freedom, everything is a prison, everything is a thing that must be escaped. There are always problems. Always. We should have known better than to think as we did when we slipped of our own will into this desolate world. Perhaps we did know better. But this prison promised freedom, and so we chained ourselves to a different tyrant, for the sake of variety. I thought I was writing to you about this island, about the things you could do, the freedoms you could enjoy. I see now that I am only lamenting my own miseries, which have haunted me since the beginning. Set the letter down, O heir of the island, if you so desire. I've told you all you will find useful to know. I told myself that I did everything for you, but was it really you that I was doing things for, or was it for myself? Did I really, truly care about the men who would be murdered by monkeys? Or was I just fleeing from the silence that haunts my every dream? The history tells of a man who built a ship, and sailed for another island, another world. He never came back to this island. Should I too seek out another land? But it would be the same world. I cannot flee from the silence. A larger prison only means more echoes. Perhaps I should just go back to the library. Read all the books again. Go back to the workshop. Try all the crafts again. Try to truly master weaving, which was always my favorite. Try all these things and see if the silence can be filled. Or perhaps there is no way to fill the silence. No way to fill the silence. I end my letter there, I suppose. In silence. All the words of the past and all the hopes of the future just don't seem to matter. May your future be brighter than mine, O heir of the island. I go now to my empty halls again, wishing for a better world which I will never see. Daniel. Callie read the letter in the silent, candlelit halls of the stronghold, and glanced down at her pregnant womb. Her unborn child wriggled a little bit. The child that was a mark of the shame upon her purity. The child she had prayed she wouldn't have. The child she had gotten anyways. The child who had come with her into exile. Sighing, She folded up the letter, finished her dinner of strange plants and roast chicken, and went to bed. This was her third night on the island, her second in the stronghold, her first with dry clothes. The howls of the monkeys still rang outside, but some thoughtful predecessor had made the door to the bedroom soundproof, and as she shut the door, all fell silent, save for the gentle breeze of damp air which fluttered through the vents which were in every room. No monkey's howl carried through that, thank goodness. She used the strangely modern washroom, then brushed her teeth, then flopped down onto the bed. It was a nice bed. Well, she had certainly been living in a dream ever since she'd conceived her illegitimate child. Or at least she'd tried to live in a dream. She mostly failed. That didn't stop her from perpetually trying again and again to ignore everything. Ignore the child, ignore the shame, ignore the wreck her life was becoming. Every night, she half wished to die, and the only reason she kept on existing was because there was no reason to die. Just like there was no reason to live. Just like this child had no right to exist. Nothing about her life made any sense. And now here she was, away from all her old problems but now surrounded by carnivorous monkeys. That certainly put things into a strange light. She'd killed one monkey, a hideous old one that reminded her of her child's equally hideous father, and screamed out her lungs until the rest had fled. The sword with which she'd killed the monkey, she'd cleaned and set on the shelf beside her bed. It looked pretty, sitting there, glinting in her candle's light. Those who had been on this island before her had certainly had quite a bit of knowledge about making weapons. She wondered where they'd gotten all the metal from. Maybe, in time, she'd discover that. There was still so much on this island to see and learn. Maybe she was alone, but maybe she wanted to be alone. Maybe this world was a prison, but maybe it was a prison big enough to fit her dreams of just being left alone. But of course, she wasn't alone. She had her child. It would be fatherless, but someday, it would be born. And then she would have an infant in her arms which she'd have to take care of. The day the child was born was one she had dreaded for a long time, but now, with no one to witness the shameful delivery but herself, it seemed fine. It was still a baby, even if she hated its father. She liked babies. Maybe it would be a boy, and grow up to look like her father, instead of its father. Maybe it would be a girl and grow up to look like her mirror. Maybe things would always be fine. Callie slept. She dreamed of her old home, of all the good things she had left behind, and she awoke in the middle of the night, embittered. She slept again, and dreamed this time of the monkeys she had fled from, screaming heard from both them and herself. She woke again, terrified. Terrified, but alone. So she slept again. And this time she dreamed of a world where it was just herself and her child. She awoke in her dream to find that she had dreamed the dream of an island where there was no one at all but herself, and she screamed again to be surrounded by the world that knew of her disgrace, but then the morning came. And she awoke to find herself well and truly alone again. She arose. She had breakfast. She gathered the eggs and milked the cows. She dropped a rock on a monkey at the bottom of the cliffs which her pastures sat atop. She smiled to see the monkeys begin to fight amongst each other. She went to the library and began reading through the books contained therein. Then she went and had lunch and glanced again at the letter which Daniel had left for her. So maybe the island was a prison, maybe it was full of problems, Maybe it would grow lonely in time. To Callie it just seemed like the perfect escape and the perfect solution. The silence which Daniel had detested seemed the sweetest melody to her ears. Did the future matter? Not really. No doubt she'd grow weary of chickens and cows and monkeys before long, but right now, the present was sweet. The end.